Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to my third and final review of the 60th anniversary specials, and of course I'm going to be talking about the Giggle. Now there's a lot of things to talk about with this episode. Some of them are good, some of them are not. Now in the thumbnail of this video you will see that I have put wasted potential, and I think that is exactly what this episode is. It could have been a hell of a lot more than what it actually ended up being, but it is what it is. So I will try and talk about the positives and then get to the problems that I have with this episode. But starting off, I've got to say, Neil Patrick Harris. I thought he was a great casting for the Toymaker, and I thought a lot of his scenes were fantastic. Even though I didn't think the accents always worked or sounded good, I liked the fact that he did switch up his accent. So sometimes it was German, sometimes it was British, sometimes it was French, etc. Because in the original Celestial Toymaker story, the reason why he lost the game was because the Doctor could mimic his voice, so I thought it was a nice throwback to that. And I think up until a point, and I will talk about it, but up until a point, I thought the Toymaker was creepy, I thought he came across as threatening, I thought he came across as intimidating, and I thought he was a really good villain. David's great as the Doctor. It was nice seeing Unit. I thought the overall plot of the story wasn't bad. Overall, I've got some issues with it, but overall I thought it was fine. I did like the stuff with the puppets. I thought the cold open in this actually made sense, unlike in the previous episode where it's about the invention of the TV, and I thought it played into the story quite well. I thought that was very well handled. So yeah, there's good. I've got to talk about it though. I've got to talk about some of the shit in this, because I think overall I enjoy this episode. I think that there are positives, but I've got to say, for every good thing there is a negative to it, and also some of the things that this story does, you know what I'm talking about, it just didn't work for me. The laziness of this story pissed me off. And when I say laziness, I mean the fact that Russell has rehashed several ideas and concepts that he has used in Doctor Who before and threw them in this episode. So we've got the main villain whose big sort of entrance sequence is to a pop song. We have got the Doctor's companion end up with David Tennant living with them because he's a duplicate of the Doctor. We've got someone who picks up something that contains the entity of the Master, and it's a tease, as in like, oh, what's going to happen next? Some technological thing that everybody has access to that means that everybody on the planet is influenced by it. And listen, you can reference Archangel and admit like, oh, it's not like this. It is though, isn't it? It is the Archangel network again. And shit like that annoyed me, because watching the episode I did just think that we're doing the same thing again. Like, I understand that it's an anniversary and I understand that you want to sort of reference things from the past, but this just felt like Russell didn't have a fresh idea for this. And the fact that we are using things that he's done before, just, again, it felt lazy to me. The thing is as well, like I say, this is meant to be the 60th anniversary, and whilst I think it checks certain boxes, it's only on the surface level. Now, I've moaned about Doctor Who in the past being, particularly in Moffat's era, being too self-indulgent, too self-referential, too patting itself on the back and look how clever it is, and here's old things, here's all the monsters all at once, here's all the Doctors all at once. But I think in an anniversary you can get away with it. And like I say, it does on a surface level tick those boxes. You've got an old villain that returns, you've got an old companion, well, you've got two old companions if you include Donna in that, returning. You've got an old Doctor returning in terms of David Tennant. You technically do have a multi-Doctor story in this, but it doesn't really feel like it celebrates 60 years of Doctor Who. It feels like it celebrates series 4. It's frustrating in that sense, because I genuinely feel like the Toymaker could have been the villain for all 3 of these episodes. This does feel rushed in terms of the Toymaker stuff, and it is a shame that, listen, I understand that Eccleston has got his problems. I understand that, you know, in Power of the Doctor we saw all the living classic Doctors apart from Tom. I understand that Capaldi said he wouldn't come back. And to be fair, I don't mind that we did have David Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa appearing together and make it like that, but it didn't feel like a celebration of Doctor Who and the fact that it has been around for 60 years. And then when you see an article from Russell T Davies where he says, and we'll get to why it will piss people off, but when he comes out and says this episode will piss off diehard Doctor Who fans, that did not sit right with me whatsoever. So Russell, you've done something in this episode that you yourself say will piss off diehard Doctor Who fans. Okay, well my response to that is, then why do it? Why do it? Why piss off your core audience, your target audience? How is that meant to benefit you? And the thing is, what gets me is the fact that he came out with that in such a blasé way. And maybe the article, you know, I've taken it the wrong way, but how fucking dare you say that? This is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. Do you actually understand how significant that actually is? The majority of TV shows and franchises as a whole, they don't get to be 60 years old. And I'm well aware that Doctor Who has had periods in its history where it wasn't always on the air. But this is coming up to what, like the 40th series? So for 2/3 of its history, Doctor Who has been on the air, regardless of, you know, when it went on a hiatus in the mid-80s, when it got cancelled, and then obviously there was a TV movie which was seen as a false start, and then it came back in 2005. Either way, Doctor Who has been in the British public consciousness and even the world consciousness for decades. And for you to come out and say a comment like that, I think is horrible. You know, this is going to piss off the fans. Again, why do it then? Why would you want to piss off the people who have made sure that this show has lasted as long as it has? You know, diehard Doctor Who fans, I'm just going to say it, yeah, they can be toxic. Of course they can. They can in any fandom. I'm not going to stand here and say that I haven't been a part of it, because I absolutely have. And I get that and I understand that. But diehard Doctor Who fans are the people who, back in the 1960s, they would record the audio off their TV of certain stories, and because they did that, we now have animated versions of those stories because the BBC subsequently junked them. Die-hard Doctor Who fans are the people that started Big Finish, and so when it was the wilderness years where Doctor Who wasn't on air anymore, there was still brand new Doctor Who adventures with older doctors that we could listen to and get the new stories. You know, it's the same reason why we ended up with something like Scream of the Shalka, because at that point that's what anybody thought a new series of Doctor Who would be like, because it wasn't going to come back on TV. So you might want to come out and say, oh, this will piss off diehard Doctor Who fans, but Russell, you're in a fucking job because of diehard Doctor Who fans. So don't just come out and say shit like that in such a blasé way and think it's okay to say it, because it isn't. Okay then, one rant aside, let's get to the other things that I'm going to rant about in this video, because we knew it was going to happen. So before I get into the bi-generation, I want to talk about the Toymaker a little bit, because for me, like I said before, I thought he was very creepy, I thought he seemed intimidating, I thought he seemed like a genuinely great villain, and then there was one moment that just totally flipped it for me. And it was the Spice Up Your Life scene. Because that for me was way too over the top, that was way too camp, and I think tonally it didn't quite fit with what we'd seen with the Toymaker up until that point. Now the scene itself was fun, it was fine. Again, like I mentioned before, it was very reminiscent of the Master back in series 3, but I felt like the Toymaker had an edge to him, and then as soon as that scene happened, that edge was gone. And admittedly, even after that, they do wrap up the Toymaker stuff pretty quickly, and he doesn't seem like a threat anymore at all. But I just thought they could have kept the tone with the Toymaker with that, and to be fair, he could have been the enemy throughout all 3 of these episodes, and I think it would have worked a hell of a lot better. But the Spice Up Your Life scene it undermined what we had before. Now, there was still creepy stuff in it, in the sense of he turned the unit soldiers into like balloons or bouncy balls, and you can still see the face of one of them in there. He turned the bullets into rose petals, and even though that is a bit goofy and that is a bit camp in itself, you could still have that but still keep the tone from before and not have this weird unnecessary dance routine. But yeah, it didn't work for me, if I'm being totally honest. And then we get the bi-generation. Now, I put it on Twitter that for me this felt like a 14-year-old has written some fan fiction, and the more I think about it, the more I stand by it, and the more that, yeah, no, I don't like it. The problem is, I think Russell fundamentally does not understand regeneration. I mean, you go back to the end of time and he's saying stuff like, I die and a new man takes over and swans off, what have you. Well, no, that's not exactly how it works. Like, the Doctor is still fundamentally the same person, he just looks different and there's a little bit of a tweak in his personality. It isn't like that at all, and the fact that David Tennant is still around now, I have a problem with. But also, it undercuts the idea of regeneration as a thing and as a concept, because for me, yeah, like I say, he doesn't die. He is going to be someone else, and fundamentally he will be someone else. But it is a metaphor for death. Like, you've got a character there who people love and people don't want to let go of, but they have to. And they have to accept that, okay, things are going to be different now. And I think that's a great message to have. But if it's just a case of, well, your favourite Doctor, guess what? They don't die. They will always be around. And his logic when he says in the commentary thing where he's talking about how every Doctor's done this before, I fucking hate that too. Because one of the reasons is, well, if older Doctors come back, then it explains why they look older. Well, you fixed a problem that wasn't a problem, because I don't think anybody had any issue with the older Doctors coming back and they look older. You know, there was in Time Crash, I think Moffat wrote a line of dialogue that said something about like the time differentials are out of whack or something like that. No one cares. So you've solved that problem for no fucking reason. If you wheel out 80-year-old Sylvester McCoy in the next episode, I don't think anybody would have said, Jesus, Sylvester looks 80. But again, like I say, it undermines the fundamental message of regeneration, which is a metaphor for death. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it actually adds anything. If anything, it confuses stuff. And what you've also done by doing it is you've undermined Ncuti. Now, I want to make it crystal clear. Ncuti Gatwa, I love. I really like what I've seen from him so far. I think he's going to be a fantastic Doctor, both in like the 15-20 minutes that we've seen here, but also in the trailers for the Christmas special. I do like the fact that we had that multi-Doctor element of this story, but at the same time, you've shafted him because David Tennant is still around, and you gave him his own TARDIS as well, which I think is bullshit too. Because now what you're going to get is people who will say, he's not really the Doctor, he just split off from the proper Doctor who we know is still out there somewhere. You can't argue with them, because yeah, technically that's true. I mean, yeah, I get that he's David Tennant and I get that he's an iconic Doctor and all that sort of stuff, but fucking hell, move on from him. Like, he had his time. We know that he's a popular Doctor. You bring him back for a couple of episodes and we still don't really know why the clothes changed in the regeneration or why his face came back. I know there was some sort of bullshit reason that Donna said where it's like, oh, because you need to sort of chill out for a bit. That's it. That's the only reason why. But no, you bring him back and he's still around, and it's like they can't accept that he isn't the Doctor anymore. But he isn't. You know, when he left, Matt Smith took over. And in this instance, Ncuti has took over. Let them have their moment. Because Russell did the same thing with The End of Time. He undermined Matt Smith because he said, I'm dying and some new man will, you know, he's not really me and you all love me. It just didn't work for me at all. It really didn't work for me, and I feel so bad for Ncuti. And again, going at Russell again a bit, there was one line in this that I was astounded by. So when the bi-generation happens and Ncuti splits off from David Tennant, Donna says, do you come in a range of colours? And I've got to admit, I heard that line and I was just like, wow. Wow. And that's sort of the problem that I've got with Russell at the minute. I understand what he's doing, I understand his intention behind those lines, but at the same time, they're handled so haphazardly. You know, it happened with the pronoun scene in the Star Beast, it happened with the male presenting Time Lord stuff, it happened with the line in Wild Blue Yonder where the Doctor says that Isaac Newton is hot. You're putting these lines in and they are coming across not the way that you're intending them to. Like, that was fucking awful. And especially from Donna as well, that made no sense. So yeah, not only have you said that line as soon as Shooty appears, but you've still got David Tennant's shadow over him, and he's always going to have that because everyone knows that David Tennant's Doctor is still out there with a TARDIS and could be the present Doctor, as it were. Doesn't seem right. I think overall the Giggle was wasted potential, as you would have seen in the thumbnail for this video. It just had some good ideas, it did have some creepy moments, it did have a villain, but it felt like it needed a bit more time to breathe. It also rehashed ideas that I didn't think needed to be rehashed, or I think Russell didn't need to rehash these ideas. I think Shooty, whilst he looks great as the Doctor, has been set up to fail. I don't think he will. I think he will be good as the Doctor, irrespective of whatever writing Russell gives him. But there's always going to be that caveat of, well, the real Doctor's out there, like I say. Donna didn't really do a lot in this episode. I thought Neil Patrick Harris did a good job up until a point. But yeah, this didn't really feel like an anniversary. This just felt like an episode of Doctor Who that was sort of middle of the road. By generation, nah. I can't get on board with that. I think it's a dumb idea, and it's an idea by someone who clearly just thinks, let's just try something, as opposed to thinking about, does this logically make sense? Does this add anything? He's just done it for the sake of it. Similar with the Davros thing, but I'll talk about that in another video. So the Giggle, I'm gonna give like a 6.5 out of 10. The first half an hour, I was loving it. I was really loving it, and then as soon as the Spice Up Your Life scene hit, everything after that just sort of went. But I'm excited for Shooty. I'm excited for Christmas Day to see the, what's the episode called? The Church on Sunday Summer? I don't know. Either way, I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to see him because, like I said, I do like what we saw, and I do like his moments with David Tennant. I think they've got some really good chemistry. But yeah, just wasted potential. In the comments down below though, guys, let me know what you think. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever it is, let me know down below. I'm sure I'm going to have some marvellously positive comments about some of the things that I've said in there. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links and whatever else, they will be in the description down below as always. So if you'd follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye.